Hi, Emmy. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm really excited for today's conversation.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am also looking forward to it.
Yeah, one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on was because the way that you talk about post traumatic recovery growth in a very day to day way, like what does that actually look like? And what is that next level of healing once we've probably gotten out of that situation and we've worked on ourselves, we're kind of like getting somewhere, right? But what do we do with that? So, can you give us a little idea of how you came into this work and why you do what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my history is I was in an abusive relationship in high school, and it was kind of my first love, first everything. And it went on from age 15, like freshly 15 to almost 18. So it was almost exactly 3 years and really took up almost the entirety of high school for me. And it followed that classic pattern of abusive relationships that start with a tremendous amount of love bombing and then start to slowly degrade into really severe and intense abuse. My abuser was also an addict, and I think that impacted a lot of the dynamic as well and just where he was at mentally. But yeah, I went through that experience and came out of it thinking that, okay, well, life is great now. That's over. So I'm just going to move on and be happy. And that lasted for a couple months. And I went to college and just noticed that it felt like depression and anxiety were definitely following me. And throughout that abusive relationship, I had really been convinced that I was mentally ill. And that was sort of a way that I coped with the reality of I was being like psychologically tortured. Was just convincing myself like I'm crazy and I'm too much and I'm whatever. And so I went to college and pretty much just proceeded to reenact the dynamic that I had experienced in less severe ways. So I started chasing after kind of emotionally unavailable guys and just being really anxious and attaching to people who were not giving me any indication that they were ready for any kind of relationship. But I just wanted love and affection so badly and was so used to seeing myself without a lot of self respect or self worth. So that went on until I finally found someone who was interested in what I wanted, which was a relationship. And that turned out to be really toxic and unhealthy. I don't quite call it abusive, but it was not good. And that went on for another 2 years. And at the end, I kind of had this awakening and realized, what am I doing? Like I'm back in this pattern again of in a relationship that makes me feel like shit about myself. And even though it's not that bad, it's still not good. And I don't want this anymore. So left that relationship and then proceeded to really commit to never being in a toxic relationship again. And at the same time as I was finally kind of discovering a safe environment, my complex PTSD symptoms started coming out in full force. So now it's been about 3 years after the initial abusive relationship, and I'm having just a tremendous amount of symptoms. You can look up complex PTSD, and I kind of had every single one. It was really debilitating. And I finally pursued therapy. I also got into a healthy relationship and yeah, started my therapeutic journey. So this is about 2016. I'm like 21 years old, got in therapy, and for the next 3 years, that was pretty much the main focus of my life. I was still working full time. I had graduated college. I was in this relationship. We did long distance. I tried to have friendships, but I was really focused on trauma recovery because the trauma symptoms themselves were really bad and really intense. So went through trauma therapy and then around 2019, 2020, started sharing my experience of healing from trauma and experiencing trauma on Instagram through like a creative practice that I did every day and started building an audience there. After about a year of doing that in 2020, I sort of reached a point where I felt like I was capable of holding space for others. Built this audience, COVID hit, I got laid off. I discovered that coaching existed all in about a 6 month period. So it was kind of this, perfect storm to give me the chance to pursue this as a career. I started my business officially in July 2020, offering trauma informed coaching, got certified and trained in that work, and then I've been doing it ever since. So I will stop now, but I'm an open book for any and all questions.
Yeah, yeah. What I want to understand and highlight a little bit is what's the difference between what you termed as an abusive relationship in high school and the
Yeah.
toxic, but maybe quite abusive? What's the difference
Yeah.
there for you? Why do you describe
Great
it that way?
question. Yeah. So the one in high school was like, if you look up narcissistic abuse, which I try to stay away from that term, but if you look that up, you'll see a checklist and it's every single one. It's verbal abuse, emotional abuse, occasional physical abuse, sexual abuse was crazy bad, financial abuse, like every kind of abuse was going on pretty much. And it was horrendous. And then the second one that I refer to as toxic, he wasn't screaming at me. All the sex was technically consensual, although there was a lot of me fawning, me appeasing, me only having sex with him because I wanted love and affection, but it wasn't directly forced or coerced as much as I was just like, I don't get to say yes or no. Like I just do whatever someone wants. So that's why I consider it toxic is it wasn't the same level of severity. I think there were moments of abuse that occurred, but it was just a very unhealthy relationship compared to the one before that.
Yeah. I think that that is important to highlight just because I think there's a lot of, I mean, a lot of people, myself included, that have been in those types of relationships where, yeah,
Yeah.
you don't really have a whole lot of sense of autonomy or within
Yeah.
yourself, right? Because you've never learned how to own that within a relationship. And it
Yeah.
can be quote unquote normal in a
Sure.
way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important to name that, like, if that abusive relationship never occurred in high school and this second one happened, that would absolutely, I would have needed therapy from that. Right. Or I would have needed a lot of support and care. Like it was quote unquote bad enough. It was just not nearly as severe as what I had been through. But like if people are listening to this and comparing, please don't do that. If you are in any kind of relationship that is making you unhappy or feel like shit about yourself or feel like your body isn't your own, that matters 100%. We can do that. It could be worse game all day long. And ultimately, the only person that benefits from us saying, oh, it could have been worse is the people who want to control and harm us. So don't worry about them and focus on you and your feelings because I know as a coach and future therapist and going to grad school, I don't care about that it could be worse. I care that you're in pain. Period. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you for saying that. The comparison factor is never ever helpful. It only matters what's happening within you. So, a definition that I've used for trauma on here before is actually it's not mine. It comes from many other people, but
Yeah.
much too fast too soon
Yeah.
and you are dismissed within yourself throughout that time, right? And you don't feel like you even have much of a say. Sometimes you don't even recognize that you fawn, right? You completely people please in that way. But if that is for your nervous system, if it's too much for you and you are someone who feels like, especially in a relationship, um, maybe like hypervigilant a lot of the times, yeah,
Mhm.
that's traumatic for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another definition of trauma that I really like, man, I really want to find the source. Let me just look this up really fast. I'm
Yeah,
so
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Editing gods, because I'm like, it'd be nice to give this person credit. It's the
for
person that
sure.
focusing therapy modality.
Mm.
Shoot. Dang. Okay. Well, I can't find it. Thought it would be easy.
If you do, we can always put it in the show notes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, one definition of trauma that I learned in a training from the Embody Lab, and unfortunately can't remember the exact name of the practitioner, but it was essentially that, trauma occurs when our needs go chronically unmet and are not resolved. So, that like a need can be a need for food, water, shelter, right? And I think we all understand that if you are being severely neglected, that is traumatic. Another need can be for a sense of physical or emotional safety. So if you feel like you are unsafe because your parent or your partner is going to hurt you in response to you making a simple humanist mistake, for example, that's traumatic. But then there's also needs that we have for like attunement, connection, yeah, like more of that emotional safety factor that it's harder to point to and say, oh, that's severe abuse or whatever, because maybe it's not the same as being physically abused or sexually abused. But if you feel like in the home you grew up in, you can never actually be your authentic self because you're going to get, pushed to the side, overlooked, dismissed, not acknowledged or prioritized, or treated worse in response, then that's traumatic, even if it wasn't this, outright huge event. So I really like that definition too.
I love that. Yeah, because it speaks to not only, it's not just physical needs, right? Like you said,
Right.
physical, emotional, all the different types of needs. We often think of abuse as physical. And I think a
Right.
lot of people don't acknowledge that there's the emotional abuse that actually runs probably more commonly.
Yeah.
I do not know that for a fact, just FYI. I'm just
Yeah.
assuming.
Yeah.
But I mean, because it can be a lot more subtle. Right? Neglect can be more subtle than we recognize. Someone totally dismissing you and not actually acknowledging maybe some emotional needs that you have, or you don't even bring them up because you're afraid that they're going to be rejected in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of would be willing to bet that emotional abuse is more common because it's so much more normalized and sort of acceptable. I'm watching Love Island right now. I'm not going to give spoilers, but there is like rampant verbal and emotional abuse going on. And if there was physical abuse happening, they'd be kicked off the show right then. Like the producers would step in and get them out. But we're watching people scream profanities in each other's faces. I'm like, I'm sorry. Are we supposed to be cool with this in the year of our Lord 2025? Like, is this something we're okay with? Yeah. Anyways, it's disturbing.
Yeah. Yeah. What would be some examples then of maybe something other than like yelling at you? As
Yeah.
yeah,
Sure.
obviously that is not okay, right? What
Right.
would some emotional abuse or neglect look like?
Yeah, so I think a lot of emotional abuse is like coercive control. So basically, someone clearly having an agenda for you, whether it's what they want you to wear, who they want you to see, what they want you to pursue, how they want you to speak. Like it can fall on any little teeny aspect of your life. Anything I feel like typically that makes you feel alive, that makes you feel free. An abusive person is going to target that as something to control because they see the way that that can connect you to others and feel alive and supported, and they want you to solely rely on them. So yeah, controlling behavior is really common. Gaslighting is another big one. So say someone treats you really poorly and you're like, it was not, that really hurt me, that wasn't okay, and they will outright deny it ever happened, or they will say, oh, you made me act like that, you make me so crazy. Like there's just this denial that there's a lack of accountability going on all the time. Or there's these grandiose promises of, I'm so sorry, I'll change, I won't do that again. And that does not occur. Yeah, other examples of emotional abuse would be manipulation. I think that kind of goes under the guise of coercive control, but basically you're getting an understanding, whether they're saying it directly or implying it through their energy, tone, little things they say, that if you make a mistake or do something that they don't want you to do, something bad is going to happen. You're going to be punished in some way. They're going to withdraw their love and care, or they're going to hurt you in some way. They're going to do something themselves that would be hurtful to you. They're going to humiliate you, make fun of you, whatever. So ultimately, all of that is to manipulate you to be in this little box that they can control you within. So, yeah, those are a couple examples.
Yeah. I'll also add to that if you feel confused, like if you're questioning yourself
Great
all
one.
the time,
Yeah.
that's the result of gaslighting, but it can be a result of any of that, right? If you're like, well, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I did do that, but also, I don't
Yes.
know. I mean, confusion and
Yes.
questioning. Oh, yeah,
Yeah, I feel
yeah,
like that's a lot of the people I work with. Like as a coach, I don't work with people who are in like severe abusive relationships. I refer them to therapists because that feels like a higher level of care. But I will work with people who are in relationships where there's nothing like big going on, but yes, they're having those internal, this constant sense of self-doubt of like, am I crazy? Am I asking for too much? Like, but some things are really good. Like, why am I not happy? And I feel like there's this subtle gaslighting that does go on. I hear it all the time where people are saying, oh, their partners, my partner is saying, I'll do anything to make this work. I want this to work so bad. I love you so much. But then they're doing these outlandish things that tell me that they do not like me and they do not want to work on the relationship. So, like, what the hell is going on? And I'm like, yeah, that's definitely like whether it's intentional manipulative gaslighting or it's just someone is unwilling to accept the loss of you, it doesn't matter. You are confused because there's no coherence going on. Like someone is acting out of alignment with what they're saying, and that's going to naturally confuse you because it doesn't make sense.
Exactly. Yeah. The confusion comes from that, like, you're saying this and doing this, right? And then you're also blaming me for things. So,
Yeah,
of course, you're going to be freaking confused. Yeah. Yeah.
right.
Let's switch gears a little bit into how you do work with people now when they're maybe more out of the, or maybe they're, yeah, maybe they're out of the extent of direct abuse and they're kind of in this questioning phase. Like, what does that functional stage of thriving in your life look like?
Yeah, so like as a coach, I'm really focused on the here and now and future goals with the trauma informed lens of the past is going to impact the present and the future. So when people come to work with me, I'm typically asking, what is something that you're wanting for yourself right now? And for some people, it's they want to feel like they have a career that's aligned with their passions. For some people, a lot of people, it's they want healthier relationships moving forward, but they're not quite sure how to do that since they've been in toxic or abusive relationships in the past and they have that as the blueprint. Some people just want kinder self talk. They want to pursue creative hobbies. They want to have a more robust social life. So, yeah, I'm here to help people really have a more thriving life without denying the past, but rather using it maybe as information of what they don't want, and then feeling supported in a coaching relationship or in the groups I offer, that there's people or me on their team, on their side, care about their success, care about their happiness, and just provide that like relational safe space that we don't always have in our, in real life friendships because other people don't necessarily get what we're going through, or there's a lot of reasons why people seek like professional help rather than just relying on their friends. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You've mentioned a few times, I've watched some of your content, which is awesome, help really
Thank you.
explain some things. And you've talked a few times about what it looks like to set some boundaries in your life at maybe more in this stage, right? For people that are working on like, okay, I've been down the self-development route for a little bit. I've been in therapy, but what is boundaries is such a big topic, right? So we can even hone it in a little bit. The reason why I'm bringing it up is because, for example, like the questioning, if someone's been through the questioning and trying to understand like what's wrong, what's not, is it me, is it not me? A lot of times there's a lack of boundaries. So can
Mm,
you speak to
yeah.
that and like what that looks like now and working through them?
Yeah. Yeah, something I like to really hone in on and focus on is it's not just like a you deserve boundaries thing and you need to sort of believe in this robust sense of I deserve boundaries, because if you're not there yet, that's okay. More I like to think about is like boundaries are an inherent human right and a part of healthy relationships for every single person. So it's not just like you specifically need boundaries because you're healing or whatever. It's like nope, every single one of us needs boundaries. So it's universal, it's neutral, it's just kind of a fact of life. And then another thing I like to focus on is for folks who are really concerned with their impact on others and are really terrified of letting people down or upsetting people, just recognizing that boundaries are not mechanisms of control. They're not ways of punishing other people. They are actually ways of creating more connection. Because if you are just saying yes to everything, you are going to feel resentful or burnt out or exhausted. You're not going to have the same energy that you would have if you were being intentional with what you commit to, what you say yes to, and being like aligned with your true self. So when you make boundaries, one, you're telling the other person that they are allowed to make boundaries too. And you both have that freedom to choose what's best for you and be considerate of the other person. And also, you're better able to show up for work or friendships or creating a business or whatever it is with more joy, with more energy, with more satisfaction. And ultimately, those relationships build in trust and connection through the boundaries that both sides create. Those are, I guess, some of the reasons that I like boundaries. And maybe I'll pause now because I don't know if it's more like how to set them, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think we'll get there. I think that that's a really helpful lens to look through that. I mean, boundaries are human. I mean, if you're human, you need and can have boundaries. It's not just because you've been through something traumatic.
Yeah.
A lot of the people listening, when we're talking about setting boundaries within your chronic pain and illness journey, it's usually after we've kind of helped stabilize their bodies a little bit more and they're getting into recognizing that, oh, there's a lot around whether how I've treated myself, how I have been treated, how I've been dismissed a lot, how all of my emotions have been repressed that actually have contributed to my nervous system freaking out and sending me all these
Mm,
symptoms. So boundaries is a big part of our work a little bit like later on in the work. I say that as I say that, I'm like, actually, I mean, from day one, we talk about having boundaries with yourself, really, to be
yeah.
honest. It's just like more of an overt topic, I guess you could say, towards
Right.
a little bit later. Yeah. And so much of the time, I think I see people having hard time with it because they may not underneath the surface or consciously or unconsciously, really feel like they deserve in a compassionate way to
Mhm.
have to like choose themselves sometimes
Yes.
because it feels selfish, right? It feels like, well, I can't because I don't want to be mean to someone else. But in reality, like I love what you just said, that it can bring you closer. The more that you are yourself, the more that someone else is able to be their selves as well in a way. And that's just in the best interest of everyone.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I feel like it's so much more difficult to like start making boundaries with people who are maybe used to you not having them. Rather, when you meet new people and you can just start right from the beginning of, the way you figure out plans or what you agree to when you're just getting to know someone, like you can from the jump be like, I am a human being that has boundaries, not saying that directly, but enacting that. And then if they don't like that, it's a lot easier to lose them when you don't know them yet compared to when you have a long-standing relationship with someone. That's a lot harder.
Yeah. Because patterns get ingrained,
Yes.
right? So if we're in the same pattern over and over with someone, it's totally possible, but it's harder to change that instead of setting new ones. I'm actually
Yes.
in I've talked about this before. I went through a divorce a couple years ago and I'm actually in a new relationship and I've been thinking about that more of like, okay, what do I want to be here, right? Like what am I owning and was really important to me in terms of my boundary and my lifestyle. And sometimes that's uncomfortable because I'm afraid of like rejecting me or like it not being okay or cool or what, I don't know, whatever the other fear I have, right? But what I've learned is that it feels really good to own my own boundaries, my own way of life, and like I don't want to negate them anymore. I don't want to not live that because it sucks. It's not me.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a really important part of almost getting to know someone's character. If they're actually going to be disrespectful of you being like, I can't hang out today, or I don't want to do that. Like, you do not want them in your life. Like, it doesn't matter how like cool they are or whatever spark you feel, like that you're going to drown in that. It's not a good avenue to pursue. Let them know right from the beginning who you are and what you stand for, like what you need, and if they respond poorly to that, they can go find someone else. Like,
Yeah, exactly. I think that for someone, I mean, I'm just assuming if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, that makes sense, right? It's that makes sense. And sometimes it's a little bit harder to do in the moment because
definitely.
that inner part of us is like, no, I don't want to be rejected. Like
Oh
me,
yeah,
be with me.
absolutely. Yes, and that's where it's like it doesn't have to be easy, it doesn't have to be fun. Like, that's why it's called the work, right? If it was just this effortless bliss to like set boundaries and watch people fall off when they're not going to respect them, then they wouldn't be called the work. Like, it's challenging to choose yourself and your well-being, but ultimately it's like you're setting yourself up for greater happiness in the long term. Like, you're thinking of the big picture, not just like this moment in life. Yeah, and so I think it's critical to make space for like the tears, the grief, the anger, the pain, the fear. Like, you don't have to be like this is so fun and easy. Like, you get to be like, this absolutely sucks, but I believe in a future where my needs are met and I am treated with respect.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for saying that part. It's very true. This is not going to be some like pleasant, easy thing all the time or much of the
Ever.
time, maybe. I don't know.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's why like I really appreciate the value of friendships and like online community and stuff, like finding like-minded people who will be like, yeah, you did nothing wrong by setting that boundary. Like it's his loss or their loss, her loss. Like, that's so helpful compared to just having only yourself to try to like bolster your resolve to commit to that. It's like having like any kind, whether it's like a therapist, a coach, a friend, a support group to be like, you did the right thing. Like that is so helpful when you're facing, maybe rejection or loss in response to you caring about yourself. Because then you experience connection in result of you caring about yourself.
Exactly. And that connection is that co regulation that
Yeah.
actually helps settle our nervous system, right? That's so
Yeah.
important, which you probably never got in a toxic or abusive relationship. And so you
Exactly.
don't really actually know what that means. I tell the people in my group that all the time, like, this is so important for us to see each other in this, right? So you can show up and
Yeah.
be you and be validated and
I love
seen.
that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you also talk about self compassion a lot throughout this journey and like
Mhm.
how that looks. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Can you walk us through a moment like when self love first shifted things for you? Self compassion?
Sure. Yeah. So I feel, I've said this online before, I feel like I approach my personal healing work and a lot of my professional work through this combination of love and hate, which sounds crazy, but love for survivors, love for good people out there, whether they're survivors or not, people who make you feel safe and who are caring and compassionate and kind. Love, my whole heart filled with love. And then I have a lot of hatred for abusive people, systems, experiences. I hate it, right? I'm definitely an angry girl. I'm way more angry than sad, generally. So that's kind of how I approach, like I said, both my work professionally and personally. And so when it comes to self compassion, a lot of it is driven by this, like, by this desire to be completely different than my abuser is who I think of, but also just abusive people in general, abusive systems, abusive power dynamics. Like I never want to be like that because I hate it so much and I know what it did to me and I see what does to hundreds of thousands, millions of people. So I'm like in this moment, so like I had to train myself to shift away from shame. It was very much this practical decision that I had to make. Alongside therapy obviously helped, but that 1 hour of therapy every week, every other week, there was shame thoughts happening every fucking moment of the day. So I had to like train myself to be like, yeah, okay, yep, that's coming up, that you're a piece of shit and you'll never find love and whatever, like the kind of just inner bully, inner critic. And nope, we're not doing that. Like just putting this sort of boundary on it of like, no, I'm not gonna buy into that anymore. I'm done with that. That is what he taught me. That is his voice in my head has conditioned me to think of myself so poorly. I'm done. Like I'm not going to do that anymore. And so I think it took a couple like years, honestly, of really intentional effort, but it absolutely paid off. And I think about this a lot now because I will have this little voice pop into my brain that now is so distinctly not me. And it's like kind of the ghost of him, where it's like I do a lot of content creation. I'm getting into like vlogging and kind of more influencer work right now. And I just know my ex would rip me apart, like, and think that is just the most pathetic shit ever. And so I hear this little like tinkling back there of that. And I'm immediately just like, haha, like, I don't care. Like, that's great. Like, you don't like it. I don't care. And so it just feel I have this really strong like habit of choosing self-compassion of like, I am a human being. I'm allowed to do whatever I want as long as I'm not hurting others and maintaining my integrity. Like, no one can tell me I'm bad for doing things that make me happy. So, anyways, that's kind of my approach. I think it's a little bit different. It's not super soft. I'm kind of more like, let's go. But that's
Mhm.
kind of the energy I bring to the self compassion work.
Yeah. Well, and it probably took some time and work to recognize that voice was not yours, right? That
Definitely.
that fear, that criticism, that shame
Yes,
about anything you're doing, I'm assuming, right?
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. And it's like, I had to go through this whole transformation away from, like I said earlier, thinking I was bad. I was mentally ill. I caused this abusive relationship, and really transform that into like, I was 100% the victim. Like, this was never okay at all. And sometimes it felt like the more I grew up, like I'm 30 now, and this all happened when I was 15, 16, and 17, like looking back and being like, how could I have possibly expected myself to avoid what occurred? Like, I had supportive family, supportive friends. It was so malevolent and like targeted and horrible. But anyways, yeah, I had to go through this transformation of like, it was never about me. Like, it was all about his bullshit. And I was just the target because I wanted more than anything to be loved. So that helps as well. But yeah, I really think about like, when I am compassionate with myself, I'm better able to learn from my mistakes. I'm better able to keep moving forward rather than getting stuck in this like, just give up, you suck. It's like, well, who does that help? Like, my work is so mission driven and purposeful. It's like, okay, if I listen to that, I'm going to stop showing up and doing my work or being a good friend or being a good community member. So, like, instead, let's be gracious, let's be patient, let's be compassionate, because then I can have more energy to keep showing up and doing what I consider to be important work in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And in order to shift out of that, like, hey, that isn't me, and into this, I'm choosing this for myself, that is compassion in and of itself, right?
Yeah,
It can look however you want it to look, but
yeah.
yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel like it's not all about like, I was so fixated on symptom, not just reduction, but like evisceration when I first started therapy, because I'm just like, okay, let's go. Like, I'm so fucking tired of these
Mhm.
symptoms. Like, they're horrible, right? Which is totally understandable. But I had this whole revelation where I'm like, me being so obsessed with stopping nightmares, stopping feelings, right? That I'm feeling ashamed of myself when I'm failing at that. And it's not my control. I can't control the nightmares, the intrusive thoughts, the emotions, the nervous system dysregulation. So I might as well just be kind to myself throughout that, because that is healing. It's not just about getting rid of the symptoms, it's also about being a compassionate person to yourself. Like, that's the antithesis of abuse.
And that statement right there is so huge for healing from anything.
Yes.
That's like one of the biggest subjects I talk about all the time, is the way that you approach yourself, your
Yes.
symptoms, because you can't control them. You can't change that they're here, even if there's this work, right? There's this work that we do, nervous system regulation, therapy, you can do all these things. So on one hand, it seems like, well, then I should be able to control it, right? I can just be able to control the symptoms if I can do all this work. It's just not that easy. It doesn't work in that way.
Right.
So we have to be compassionate to ourselves, because that's the way through and the way
Yeah.
to heal. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do have some overlap with like the chronic illness world because I have like three or four of them,
Yeah.
which I
That was
attribute
gonna
to
be my next
trauma.
question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, interesting. But yeah,
Yeah.
I just thought of that because I feel like with chronic illness, there's not always a deep reason. Like, it could be genetic. It could be long COVID because you got sick one time with COVID and now you have long COVID. It could be, there's so many reasons people develop chronic illnesses that have nothing to do with like, some big thing that you can resolve. Like, it's just the way that it is. And so that inspires me too to practice self-compassion, just because, not because like, oh, I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to heal from this, but because I'm suffering, I deserve compassion. Just like if I saw my friends suffering, I would want to give them compassion. I don't need to understand why they're suffering. I don't need to find the cure. Like, I don't need to make it all better. Like, I just want to be kind, and I want to be supportive. So yeah, like applying that inward too.
Yeah, there's many different reasons we can track, well, that's other podcast episodes, but there's many different reasons why chronic illness, autoimmune diseases, things like that, pain come into play. It's never just like A plus B causes C. Like, there's always
Yeah,
many different reasons. And sometimes can be the hardest thing, one of the hardest things we go to, because a lot of times we don't understand it, right? Don't
yes,
have answers. And yes, compassion is so important. That's literally, I mean, yes, it's a play on my name, but I use the word heal with grace because we need it. We need grace. We need compassion
I
in
love
any
that.
healing that we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, the Graces of the world that became healers, like, got that branding locked in. I love it. Yeah, it's
It took me
great.
a while, to be honest. I never used my name in probably the first 5 years of being a therapist,
Wow.
and then I was like, "Oh."
Yeah, it's so great because it's like it's yeah, exactly like a play on words and completely reality. Like it is healing with grace
Yeah.
in both
Yeah.
ways. I love
Yeah.
it.
Okay. So we've kind of gone in a few different realms, if you will, all obviously very centered on trauma, healing, self-compassion, and what that looks like now. Is there anything else around what we've talked about that you feel like is important to note, you want our listeners to know that we haven't talked about?
I can't think of anything. I feel like those are
You don't have
I feel
to.
like my brain can do a lot of like, oh yeah, like answering and like playing off. And sometimes an open-ended question, I'm like, I'm lost. So no.
Me too. Me
Yeah,
too.
all
Uh,
good.
have you ever looked into your human design?
Yes.
I'm
Do you
curious if
have a
that was
hunch?
actually, I'm not completely sure, but when you said that, sometimes there's certain types that really
Mm,
respond well to questions. Like that's when they're on. They can
mm,
respond, they can link things, but open-ended is like, yeah.
gotcha. I'm a manifesting generator.
Okay, that
What are
tracks.
you?
Yeah. Projector.
Okay, nice. Very
Yeah.
different, but I don't
Yes.
know a ton about it. But I all I know is when people find out I'm a manifesting generator, they're like, "Oh, okay. That's
Yeah.
why you never stop." Got it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I have just found it as a way to learn more about myself. It's helped.
Yeah,
And
I
so
love that. I'm a big Enneagram girl, and then astrology, I would say, is number 2. Yeah,
yeah, cool. Okay. What are
nice.
you on Enneagram?
I'm a 2-wing 3.
Okay. Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. A 9.
Nice,
I don't
cool.
really know.
Lot of serendipity or like overlap with the 2s and the 9s. I feel like it's like let's
Mhm.
create harmony and be gentle and love people and yeah,
Yeah,
not be
exactly.
confrontational.
Yeah, that's a learning process for sure.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Cool. All right, Emmy. Well, it was really, really wonderful to have you on here. Can you tell our listeners where to find you, what you're offering right now?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I love chatting. Yeah, so my website is emmymarie.com, and that is where you'll find everything I'm offering, whether it's one on one trauma informed coaching. I also offer trauma informed business coaching. I've got some courses, I got a lot of free resources. And then on social media, I'm at Blooming with Emmy on Instagram and TikTok. And I post on both of those like every day. Feel free to say hi if you want to. And yeah, thank you again for having me.
Thank you. And we'll have it all linked below. And keep tuning in, and we will see you next time. Thanks, Emmy.
You're welcome.